So, ladies and gentlemen, at the first I want to thank the organizers for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with you again. The role of the last speaker isn't good, I think, and my second disadvantage is that is speaking after Professor Grasser. So I will try to present as quickly as possible, and don't be boring, I try. So, functioning of the European Union goes hand in hand with integration. While is it true that the efforts to integrate European states were underway in early historical periods, we can see pan-European movements at European Federal Union and an appeal to the United States of Europe, but only the combination of integration of European communities gave it a different dimension. It is the European integration that has become what distinguishes the European Union from other so-called classical international groupings. It is also one of the signs of its supranationalism. It is apparent that the phenomenon of European integration has experienced expansion in its popularity in several stages. The first probably came with the first request for enlargement. One of the stages played out at the turn of the millennium when the European Union considered moving on with its integration in connection with the creation of the treaty establishing a constitution for the European Union. And we can also consider so-called great enlargement in 2004, a stage when the countries that had previously formed the so-called socialist bloc joined. Thus, we can generalize that there was always been a visible interest in the European integration project. Now, Ukraine is so equally indisputable is the fact that the European integration in each of its phases faced a certain limitation or limits that it tried to overcome in its next phase of integration, such as intermarket monetary union and so. In my contribution, therefore, I touch on a topic that is already known. However, I would like to draw attention to some aspects that appears to be presenting again. The examination of any limits may take many forms. Important for the identification is always the sign of examination. Unquestionable are certainly that the limits set by the law, in the case of European Union by primary law, the so-called legal limits. The role of the law is a regulatory system, is to set objective limits in the interest of efficiency. But we also know the so-called factual limits. These arise from a development of the society and development of integration. In a positive sense, they subsequently become an inspiration for changing legal regulation. But in a negative sense, they in fact remain alongside the law and accrue other negative phenomena. It is this functional level that many times becomes the problematic one. So, to the fundamental legal limits is the very delimitation of the form of the European Union as a supranational international organization and integration grouping. Legislative limits are defined by the Lisbon Treaty in its Article 3A, paragraph 2, and also in Article 263 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union. It is had like this, thus the basic legal legitimate limits of integration can be considered equality of member states before treaties, prohibition of discrimination on grounds of nationality, national identity, fundamental political systems, fundamental constitutional systems, regional and local governments, fundamental state functions, ensuring the territorial integrity of the states, maintenance of law and order, ensuring national security and principles of the rule of law. The above legal limits stem from the position of the states and sovereign in the relations based on the rule of international law. Despite developmental turbulence, the state continues to remain the most important participant in international relations, as evidenced, for example, by the currently evident lack of unanimity of member states on the European Union's security policy. All cycles in the global political system began and ended with nation states. It is the power potential of the state that determines its exceptional and critical position in this regard. Sovereignty, often referred to as sovereign political powers in the state, is inevitable and closely related to the attribute of power in the state. Similarly, the sovereignty of the state is, and most likely will continue to be a topic of discussions, and now we can see also the subject of many professional meetings, conferences, or seminars. But I want to point out one of the important aspects of state sovereignty, namely the independence, sovereignty of state's power over any other power inside or outside the state's borders. Certainly, on international scale, we cannot make this independence of state power absolute from any other power, as states are not isolated from each other, but interdependent, and they are naturally limited by the sovereignty and sovereign rights of other states, general international law, and freely assumed obligations. In this respect, however, sovereignty is expressed as a principle, the tenet of the equality and self-determination of nations, and at the same time, it is one of the fundamental principles of international law in the sense of the Declaration of Principles of International Law. With some generalization, we can say that the reflection of the sovereignty of power is its legitimacy, expressed by the legitimation chain, the source of power, citizen elections, state authorities, the implementation of power. It is the state authority that are the phase through which legitimacy and sovereignty translate into practice. We will deal with above mentioned three aspects: sovereignty of power, legitimacy, and citizenships in the next section, namely in a casual relation to the European Parliament. Thus, a specific situation arises in the contents of the European Union. There is a long-standing dispute over sovereignty between the member states and the institution of the Union in the form of a latent conflict over the relationship of European Union law with the constitutions of the member states. Here too, it is obvious that the sovereignty of the Union tends to be implemented through the European Union institutions. The institutions of bodies of the European Union are the factor that played an important role in its integration. Their position changed not only in terms of their compositions, but also in terms of their powers. The examination of the body of the European Union is also important in relation to the future development of the Union. Pursuant to Article 13 of the Treaty of European Union and Article 223 of the Treaty on the Function of the European Union, the main bodies of the European Union are considered to be the following. In addition to the exclusive enumerative listing in the treaties, a common feature of these bodies is that they apply in the manner provided for in the treaty, whether they form the standards of European Union law, regardless of where they are domiciled. In another sense, we can also characterize them as authorities that in some way resemble the authorities of the states in terms of powers or, alternatively, creation. In this respect, we denote them as fundamental or main bodies of the European Union, which have the opportunity to use subsidiary or auxiliary bodies for their activities. At the level of federalism, and in composite states, is the federal authorities that perform essential tasks not only in relation to the law on the federation. Particular attention is paid to those federation bodies that are created directly, so their legitimacy is unquestionable. In the European Union, only the European Parliament is such a body. Elections to the European Parliament will soon take place in all member states this year. At the same time, the European Parliament is the body whose transformational development is the most pronounced among the bodies of the European Union. I will mention some of these historical millenniums. The predecessor of the European Parliament was the Parliamentary Assembly, which was established under the Treaty of the European Coal and Steel Community and consisted of 78 representatives, delegates from the national parliament of the 6 founding countries. Thus, it was the position of the indirectly created body from members of the parliaments of the member states, from representatives of the legislative powers within individual member states. The powers entirely conferred did not indicate that the Assembly was planned as a fundamental legislative body, and most likely not as only lawmaking body. In accordance with the founding agreement, it was vested with mainly consultative and supervisory powers. Its task was also to supervise the activities of the High Office, evaluate its annual report, or divides it of full powers in justified cases permissible by the treaty. In March 1962, the Assembly was renamed the European Parliament, but this name was not incorporated into primary law until the Single European Act in 1986. The first direct elections to the Parliament were held in June 1978. In July of the same year, the European Parliament began to operate with 410 members from 9 member states. The transnationality of the European Parliament was supported by the fact that its members, deputies, lost their dependence on national parliaments, and from the point of view of creation presented a direct legitimacy of, in the sense of the legitimation chair through a direct election. The Single European Act once again extended the role of the European Parliament, which gained the right to express its opinion on the issue of admitting new member states to the community and subsequently to authorize or not to authorize their entry. The legislative process of cooperation was enshrined in secondary legislation, and it also affected the position of the European Parliament. From the original advisory consultative power, Parliament was granted a substantive share in the creation of some legal act. In practice, this means that the Council couldn't adapt the common position after hearing the opinion of the European Parliament, but still without the need for its consent. The Maastricht Treaty significantly strengthened the role of the European Parliament in both legislative and supervisory work. For example, the introduction of the co-decision procedure strengthening its participation in the creation of a secondary legal act. It was granted the so-called budgetary power. In relation to the Commission, Parliament has acquired the right to request legislative action, and its power to appoint the Commission has been strengthened. At the request of the at least a quarter of members, it was allowed to set inquiry committees to investigate offences or misconduct in the implementation of community law before the Court of Justice. The existence of the power of the European Parliament was renewed in the legislative area under the Treaty of Amsterdam, when the number of sectoral policies in which the co-decision principle was applied to the adoption of legal acts was increased. The current European Council decision establishing the composition of the European Parliament changed the number of members of Parliament to 7,020. On the basis of a brief historical excursion, we can see that the European Union made efforts to strengthen sovereignty and increase legitimacy precisely by strengthening the position and power of the Parliament. As already mentioned, year 2024 is an elections year for the European Parliament. The elections in individual countries will take place between June 6 and 9 with more than 400 million eligible voters in the 2007 member states. The Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union regulates the right to vote in its fifth title entitled Civil Rights. The right to vote is specified by the Charter in Title 5 in Article 38 and 40. The above-mentioned articles deal only with electoral law in the supranational and municipal level, which is a logical procedure for not interfering with the national level in the area under examination. In relation to the transnational level, Article 39 touches on the active and passive electoral rights to the European Parliament, namely the specification of entities entitled to vote in elections. It also lays down the principles of the exercise of suffrage, which are already the traditional universality, directness, secrecy, and freedom of elections. The above-mentioned level of the regulation completes the general provisions of the electoral law in connections with the fact that citizens of the European Union have the right to elect their representatives, directly create a representative body on the basis of the legitimation chain. The regulation of how elections are carried out is the exclusive competence in the member states. Although there are some common rules on elections, some aspects may vary from country to country, such as whether it is possible to vote by mail or from abroad, and so on. Equally, the conditions for candidates for the European Parliament are set by the states themselves. In the elections, national political parties compete for voters, some of which are affiliated with a pan-European political party. The European dimension comes only after the elections. When elected, the parties can become part of traditional political groups. In this case, the civic dimension is of a specific nature. It grants right to entitled citizen of the Union, explicitly specified in the civil rights section. These rights, and that also means the right to vote, may be held by entitles that are entitled to the status of citizen of the European Union. An EU citizen is any natural person who holds the citizenships of any of the member states. Due to the nature of citizenship of the Union, the citizenship principle is reduced to citizenship of a group of member states. Here we identify one of the basic limits of European integration, the clash to state sovereignty with the personification of citizenship. On the one hand, the fact that EU citizenship is linked to the citizenships of member states makes in de facto uncontrollable for EU citizenship holders. At the same time, it is impossible for the European Union to interfere in the relationship of Euro citizenships. The conditions for its acquisition laws are in the hand of the member state. With the withdrawal of member states, the European Union also loses voters of the European Parliament, for example. These facts negate the basis principle of which sovereign state stands, the existence of their own population, the barrier of legitimacy, and creator of state power. Thus, Euro citizenship doesn't play an important role in relation to the creation of the European Parliament. The citizenship of member states is crucial in this respect. So, if we look at statistical indicators, The area of countries whose borders form the external border in the European Union, sometimes not very correctly referred to as the EU area, is more than 4 million kilometers square. The population accounted for by the member states is approximately 4,048 million. So far, the elections to the European Parliament have been held a total of 9 times. The electoral turnout of citizens of all member states oscillated around 50%. The highest turnout was in 1978 when Parliament was elected for the first time and elections were held in 9 member states. Consequently, the lowest turnout was in 2004 when 10 new member states took part in the election for the first time. So far, the Slovak Republic has the first place in the lowest participation of all member states. According to statistical indicators, we can perceive that only half of the possible voters exercise the sovereignty of their power in relation of the EU, which distorts the idea of 4 million European citizenship. However, statistical indicators also indicate significant polarization of society, which is also visible on a European scale. These are the challenges that the European Union will have to face in the future, and even when organizing relations with member states, it will have to reflect on the personal substrate behind it. So, instead of a conclusion, I want to tell one idea from the work Quintus Horatius Flaccus. There is a way to go about anything, but everything has its limits. So, thank you for your